What is going on, everybody? If you don't know, now you do know. You're officially tuned in to another special edition of the Hfwb podcast series. Once again, this is your host, Clifton Pope, and with me today, I have a very special woman who's, you could basically be inspired from basically within her own journey within itself. Like, she's, what a lot of people don't realize about her, she's a recovering addict who went from that to, of course, building herself up within her own fitness journey, inspiring others to do the same, and literally lifting them up. If you catch what I did there, I'm gonna have her explain that, what she means in just a second, but just overall turning herself into her own entrepreneur, her own businesswoman, and basically someone you can learn from and be inspired at the end of the day. If you haven't figured out who I'm talking about yet, you should. Welcome, Miss Selena Lopez Hinojosa from CLIFTON.
Hi, Clifton.
Hi, Selena. Thank you so much for just being on this episode of the Health, Fitness, Wealth Business podcast series. It's truly an honor.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much.
No, the pleasure is always mine. When I heard about your story and heard about what it is that you're doing as far as in the world of fitness, it's like, this woman is speaking my language. I need to get her on the show. I need to find out more about her story and what inspires her to where I myself can be inspired, because you truly inspired me, Selena, as far as with your overall journey and what you've been through and everything, which leads me to my first question that I have for you.
Yes.
For everyone who's listening to the Hfwb podcast series and is wondering, who is Selena Lopez Hinojosa? Give them a little bit of your background story, because I know there's a lot you got to get into in regards to that.
Sure. Well, I grew up here in Corpus Christi. I've always lived in Corpus Christi, born and raised. And I grew up in a barrio here in Corpus. It's called Los Encinos. Right. And so, and I have wonderful parents, and we were always very, very happy. We didn't have a whole lot, but we always had what we needed. And so, fast, do you want to know a little bit more about the addiction, or?
Tell it all. I'm all ears. The people want to hear the whole entire story.
Yes. And so I was always, Clifton, I was always a great student. I would consider myself an intelligent woman. And so my grades, my academics were always of the utmost importance to me through elementary, middle school. I always had straight A's because I really focused on doing well in school. When I got into high school, and I went to Moody. I think I saw that you went to Moody too.
Yes, ma'am. Class of 2010 graduate.
Wow. So yes, I went to Moody, and Clifton, unfortunately, like a lot of teenagers at that age, high school age, you're out and you're having fun and you're attending parties and whatnot. That's right. Yeah, I gave into trying out alcohol, and for a lot of people, it's not that big of a deal, right? Because that's kind of like what a lot of people do at that age. And I can distinctly remember the first time actually getting a buzz from alcohol, and that was probably, I think I was about 16 years old. And I believe, Clifton, that I was addicted pretty much immediately. I thought, why isn't everyone doing this? I loved everything about it.
Why isn't everyone joining the party with all this?
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was the greatest thing ever. I liked the taste of it. I liked the way that it made me feel. I thought that it made me more social, funnier. And so what started out as just kind of something fun and innocent, social thing, for me, it took a dark turn. unfortunately, drinking became something that I not only did at parties and for socially, but it became something that I began doing more often. And it progressively got worse through the rest of my high school years. My junior and senior year just kind of started slipping up with my grades and not caring really about my grades anymore. And then came the weed, marijuana, and so now you have kind of two depressants that are in the mix. And but I managed to graduate, and then when I got to Del Mar, I enrolled at our local community college, Del Mar, and I had a major of kinesiology and communications. That's when I think it really escalated to drinking excessively. So the amounts got bigger, and it just got to where I was drinking.
Where it's like you couldn't go within the first hour of the day where it's like, oh, I need a drink.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. And it just became something that I was doing more often, more drinking more of as far as quantity. And then it just became just a big deal. And, when I think back to what I told you as when I was in elementary and middle school and the first years of high school, I was such a great student. Just the contrast of being this and then leading into dropping out of, I ended up dropping out of Del Mar because I really just was not interested in my academics anymore, because I just really wanted to drink and get high.
Live life in
That's
part.
right. And so fast forward in the year 2000, I got certified as a fitness trainer. And so I was doing well. I got great jobs here in Corpus Christi. I managed some gyms and private studios, and I was seeing clients as well. And I was able to maintain a somewhat normal life, if you will, for a long time. I got married, and I think I was about 23 years old, and I had my first son. And along with aside from just the drinking and the marijuana, that's when the mental health issues began, because then I started incorporating prescription drugs, and it was just a recipe for disaster.
Out of control.
And with depression and alcohol and other drugs, there's not a good mix.
It's never a good combination. It's going to
No.
9 times out of 10.
Yes. And unfortunately, Clifton, as bad as it was, I still didn't realize how far I had slipped into the depression, and the depression got pretty severe. And now by this time, my son was about 3 years old. And I had developed, which I didn't know at this time, but I had developed borderline personality disorder. So it involves just an inability to manage your emotions. So it was layer upon layer. And Clifton, you really start to feel like you're drowning. And that you get to the point where you don't know where to start. You're so deep and far into this addiction and the depression, you really don't know where to start. And also, Clifton, what I wanted to address is that up until recently, I didn't talk openly about my story because I always thought there was somewhat of a stigma, I'm sorry, behind addiction and mental illness. And so I didn't want to tell anybody the thoughts that were going through my mind. I didn't want to tell anybody that I was drinking by myself, that I was getting drunk by myself, and that I was taking pills from my husband's medicine cabinet. That I didn't want to tell anybody about this inner turmoil that I was experiencing. And we become very good at hiding those things, and so the people around me, unfortunately, they knew that I was struggling because I wasn't the same Selena, but they didn't know the extent.
Mm.
You know,
demons that you were dealing with, and it's tough sometimes too, because only you know how you think in its entirety, and with all those thoughts that are just going around, it's like hard to sometimes process them towards like, wait, this is what's going on and everything. So
right. Yes. And in terms of my family, I told you that my parents are wonderful. They're wonderful people, and they love and care about all of their children, and excellent parents. But you here in this community, just the Mexican American culture, we didn't talk about those things. I didn't really know what depression was. I always envisioned depression as someone in a dark room in a fetal position. They don't, like a hermit, they don't get out. But the realization is, and I want you and your listeners to understand, is that a person can have severe depression, severe addiction, and be able to live in the world without not many people even knowing. Like I said, we're very good at hiding things because we don't want anyone to know, because we want to keep drinking and drugging,
and
and
give lectures and all that stuff.
that's right. Unfortunately, Clifton, there's a lot of judgment. I felt that if people knew what was really going on inside of my mind, in my body, that they would think that I was being bad, that I just wanted to party, but it wasn't about that. Well, it got to the point, Clifton, that I had started cutting myself, and it really got to be a really big problem. And one night I cut myself pretty deep, and was my husband at that time, called 911, as he should have. And I was rushed to the emergency room. And I remember kind of bits and pieces, because I probably drank about 2 bottles of wine that night, and mixed in some pills. And so I was really not in a good state of mind. So I was rushed to the emergency room here in Corpus. And I remember bits and pieces of trying to be subdued. Eventually they got me to calm down, because I was pretty much out of my mind. They were able to eventually sedate me, and I literally, Clifton, woke up the next morning. I opened my eyes and I wasn't sure where I was. And I was in a psych ward. And so I was transferred from the emergency room to, I guess, what's it called? I don't even remember the facility. I know back in the day it used to be called Bayview, but it's a rehabilitation center, and they put me in the psych ward and then later transferred me into the substance abuse unit. And so can you imagine the shock? I mean, I literally opened my eyes and I was in this place.
In the place with
So
all the crazies and everything, and thinking
that's right. And
crazy?
Clifton, I remember, I literally opened my eyes. Okay, where am I? Stepped out into, the main gathering room where everybody was. And it was like a scene from a movie. These people have mental illnesses as I did. And as far into the depression that I had gotten to at this point, I thought at that time, at that moment, I don't belong here. I'm not like these people. That was my thinking at the time, because you still don't want to be labeled as having mental illness. You don't want to be labeled as a drug addict, right?
Right.
But I stayed there for 12 days. And, Clifton, I had no intention of getting clean and sober. I kind of just went through the motions. I was sent there. I didn't want to be there. So I just took it as an opportunity, like a 12-day vacation. I just kind of did what they wanted me to do. And I eventually, 12 days later, I was released. And shortly thereafter, I went through a very traumatic divorce. It was a very public divorce. My husband at that time was running for public office. And so me getting out of rehab, him running for public office, it was a great story,
God, that has headlines written all over it.
Yes. And so that was extremely traumatic for me, because not only was I experiencing, just getting out of rehab and having these mental illness issues and addiction issues, and then now it's on the news, and now it's in the newspaper, and it was very humiliating and very, very, very traumatic. So I ended up going through a divorce and custody hearing, all that awful stuff. And so it wasn't long after I got out of rehab that I relapsed, and I relapsed hard. Because now I had this traumatic experience that I didn't want to think about. I didn't want to feel these feelings. And so an addict's way of thinking is, when you're experiencing a negative emotion, our first thought is to get high or drunk. I didn't know how to deal with these emotions other than getting drunk or getting high. And one of the most awful things about addiction is that you're always looking for a higher high, or getting more drunk, if you will. And so then I thought it was a great idea to start sniffing cocaine.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And that was probably, at that point, I was the worst that I had been. And I had gone to San Antonio one weekend. I had been divorced probably about 2 or 3 months, and by then I had a guy friend, and we decided it would be fun to spend the weekend in San Antonio. And I was still carrying on with the drinking and the prescription drugs and now the cocaine. And I ended up getting arrested. I got arrested in San Antonio for public intoxication. And one of the things with borderline personality, you tend to have, if it's not managed, you tend to have very, you can be very impulsive.
Right.
And then under the influence, even more so. And so I remember being in jail in San Antonio, and Clifton, I have this memory of, I had bought this cute little dress that I bought specifically for this trip. And I remember, waking up in jail, and I'm still wearing this dress. Got out, I was released the next morning, and they were literally released me, and I was walking the streets of San Antonio. I didn't know where to go, how to get home. It was really just a sad, awful time of my life. And this is the crazy thing was, Clifton, I never thought in a million years that I would set foot in jail. I mean, I didn't grow up like that. I wasn't that kind of person. I was a person that followed rules. And so this was totally not characteristic of me. Well, it wasn't more than a month later that I was arrested again. And this time, it was a little bit more serious. It was a lot more serious because I was driving. And so someone that had never been in trouble, I'd never even been sent to the principal's office. Within a month's time, I had been arrested 2 times. And I felt like this is pretty pathetic, Well, fast forward a few years later, I met who is now my second husband, and he's wonderful and just the best support ever. And I had a son, he had a son, and then together we had a third son. And Clifton, as much as I loved my husband, I loved the family that we had created together, I could not or would not stop what I was doing. It's baffling to people that I talk to about it, and it's even baffling to me thinking back. The love, what I always think, why I thought then, why can't I stop? Even if I love my family, why can't the love that I have for them be incentive enough for me to stop? Right. It's a cycle that's so hard to get out of.
I will say this, Selena, you're living proof of that. If anybody can break that cycle, including yourself, anyone else can do it as well, which kind of leads me to transitioning into what I wanted to ask you next.
Yes.
Where did the Lift by Selena idea came from?
Yes,
turn it into a business, into a program within itself, and explain to the people a little bit as far as your overall background in fitness and how it helped you overcome your own personal struggle.
Sure. I initially got certified in the year 2000. And during the time that I was really, really sick, I kind of put fitness on the back burner because I had gotten so sick. Well, I got sober in 2015. And, it's amazing how when you are when you're not under the influence, you start thinking straight again, you know? And so about a year after getting sober, and not just getting sober, but really working on myself, talking to therapists, getting the proper medical care that I needed, I started thinking that I started feeling God prompting me that I could start my own business. I didn't know anything about starting a business, you know, but it was really a leap of faith. At that time, I was a weight loss consultant for Jenny Craig, and it was a very good job. I was paid very well, but I really felt that God was guiding me into something else. So I wouldn't recommend this, but this is what I did at the time. I gave my 2 weeks notice at Jenny Craig, and I said, I'm going to start my own business.
It always works out like that. Sometimes it's just that
yeah,
gotta follow, you know?
that's right. Yeah, God's hand was definitely, you know, on this project, because I look back and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really have a solid plan, but so I decided I was going to make a kind of like a boot camp circuit in the backyard. I called all the ladies that I knew, you know, my friends and coworkers, ladies from church, and I said, I'm going to charge $5 for each workout, and it just started growing from there. And then I said, well, you know, this is going well. It would be awesome if we could all I could come up with a name, right? A name for this business. Cause like I said, I just jumped into it. I hadn't even thought about a name. And one lady thought of the idea of LIFT, and it was an acronym for Ladies in Faith Together, because it was my faith that had brought me to that point.
I love it.
Yes,
I was
yes,
wondering what the LIFT stood for. I'm glad you brought that up. So it stands for Ladies in Faith Together. I
yes. So yes, it did for a long time, and then, you know, things were just going well and growing. And about 2 years ago, I hired someone to help me kind of rebrand the business. And she said, well, let's take a look at your logo. Let's kind of play around with it a little bit. And she said, how about we kind of simplify it a little bit and maybe no longer make it an acronym, but how about we do something like Lift by Selena? And for me, I really like that, Clifton, because the word lift has a lot of definitions. It could be, I'm lifting you up in prayer. I'm lifting weights, literally lifting weights. So each person that comes in my doors can take lift the way they interpret their journey at that time.
That's beautiful stuff. That's beautiful stuff. But overall,
thank you.
Listening to the podcast right now and wondering, what does Lift by Selena offer exactly? Explain to the people what it is that you do, Selena. Let them know.
Sure. Yes. So, like I said, the first 2-3 years of Lift, I did primarily boot camps, and that was awesome. But you know, Clifton, with my sobriety, I really started feeling like I serve an unlimited God and I don't have any limits. As much as I love fitness and these boot camps, they're awesome, but I was ready to learn more. And so I decided in the year 2019 that I wanted to learn more about medical exercise. So I found the Medical Exercise Training Institute in Katy, Texas, and it's instructed by Dr. Michael Jones. So what is medical exercise, right?
Right.
I design and implement safe, effective, structured exercise programs for clients with medical conditions. So these exercise programs are protocol based. So we have protocol for quite a number of conditions, anything from injuries like torn ACLs, rotator cuff injuries. We see clients after they're discharged from physical therapy. And so I see clients with joint issues. I see a lot of total knee replacements, right? Post rehab for total knee replacements. But the majority of people that I see have high blood pressure, and their doctor has told them that they need to exercise in order to lower their blood pressure. And another condition that I work quite a bit with is type 2 diabetes. And so the difference between, people ask me often, what is the difference between personal training and medical exercise? So medical exercise, again, well, first of all, we have the protocol that we follow for each condition, for each client. And each client's program is monitored very closely, and there is much communication between myself and their physician. So everything that I am doing with their patient, I'm communicating it with their doctor as well. And that's for their patient's health and safety. So another difference between personal training and medical exercise is that there's a finite ending to medical exercise. Once we have reached your goal, whether it's lowering your blood glucose, lowering your blood pressure, healing, getting to where you have full function of your injury, then at that time they can transfer more so to a fitness program. So they're no longer doing medical exercise, and now I can take them through a general fitness program.
That's wonderful. So it's kind of like you're helping them when they're at their weakest and helping them build themselves back up to where they once was, if not helping them take it to the next level.
Yes.
I love that. I love that entirely. And it's like, I love the transitions on how you explained how your life is currently going up to this point, like going from the addict stage to now having your own business and becoming an entrepreneur. And now you're over here getting some modeling in with Epic Fit magazine. That's fantastic. Talk about hitting rock bottom, bouncing back up, and just sky's the limit. I love that.
Yes, thank you.
No, of course. I mean that truly. I really do.
I know.
I was going to ask you, how did this whole photo shoot come together with Epic Fit magazine? Because I'm looking at it right now, and it's just, by the way, you look incredible in all the pictures.
Oh, thank you. I worked hard for that.
Oh yeah, I could tell. I could tell there was a lot of labor and all of that put into it.
Yes.
How that came about for the people.
You know, Clifton, it kind of just fell together. It was another, another God thing. I think I found the photographer. Her name is Sarah Lyons. Okay. And I saw her on Instagram, and I saw, just the beautiful work that she had done. And so I knew that she had the highest quality work. And I think one day I just kind of like commented on one of her photos, and she we kind of just started a conversation on Instagram or something like that. And she said, hey, you know what, if you're ever interested in doing a photo shoot, we can talk about that. And I said, well, I'm not necessarily a fitness model. And she said, well, don't worry about that. And so we had this conversation on a Zoom, and she just asked me, tell me a little bit about yourself. And so I just told her a little bit about my background and what I had gone through. And she said, Selena, we have to tell your story. This is no longer just about pretty pictures. We have to tell your story. And so then that evolved into a full photo shoot. And as you can see in the Epic Fit magazine, it's a full magazine featured of just myself.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. Yes. And actually, Clifton, that's the first Epic Fit magazine. This photographer is also the publisher of another magazine. And she said, I want to create a whole other magazine. And I want to kind of gear it more toward athletic women and women that have an inspiring story to tell. And so out of this whole experience, Clifton, that was the most important thing to me, is to tell my story, because 7 years sober, I finally feel that I have healed emotionally, I have healed physically, I have healed spiritually enough that I can actually talk about my story. Whereas 3 or 4 years ago, it was still so painful that I couldn't even get through my story without crying or breaking down, because it was just a really post-traumatic stress. So now I can talk about it, and because I've healed, and now I feel, Clifton, like it's time for me to give back. The blessing that God gave me was so big that I realize, and I know that it's not just for me. It's about helping others who may be struggling with addiction and or mental illness. And it's about inspiring hope in my community.
Yes, and I love how you made that transition there, Selena, because I was actually going to ask you, if you had one bit of piece of advice you can give to anyone who's listening, who's going through their own addiction problems, what would be your go-to key piece of advice?
For me, Clifton, you have to be ready. So you have to be mentally ready to take on the journey. So my first piece of advice is to really kind of get in tune with yourself and find a motivation for you, why you want to get clean and sober. My motivation was my family. I mean, I have 3 awesome sons and an awesome husband, and I was seeing the effect that my addiction and my mental illness, what it was doing to my family.
Yes.
As well as myself, but also to my family. And that was motivation for me to say, what the heck am I doing to myself? What am I doing to my family?
It's bad enough that you're doing it to yourself, like you just alluded to, but you messed up whenever the family is affected and whenever they see it and whenever they're
Yes.
saying, hey, come back to earth now. It's time to shake out of whatever funk.
Yes. I mean, I didn't want my boys to grow up with this mom that passes out on the couch like I had been doing, and that has this depression that I can't even get up from the couch. And so that was my motivation. So my number one tip, if you will, would be find a motivation that inspires you. And you kind of have to dig down deep for that. But if your motivation is for you, maybe you want to go back to school, maybe you want to start a new career, maybe you have this young family that you want to get clean and sober for, find your motivation. And I felt like that was my urging, my prompting.
That's wonderful stuff. And I feel like for everyone who's currently listening to this episode of the podcast series, and who's, you know, someone or you yourself is going through addiction, you need to replay what Miss Selena Lopez Hinojosa just said. Find your motivation, and then I guarantee you, you're going to overcome that battle. That's for sure.
That's right.
My last question I have for you, Selena, before we slowly start to wrap everything up, where do you see yourself as far as like your overall business and your overall position where you are in life? Where do you see that heading in the next few years, and what do you feel like Lift by Selena can do within that time frame?
Yes, well, actually, a few things. I want to continue building my medical exercise practice. And with that, I am currently working on a protocol, a medical exercise protocol specifically designed for addiction recovery and depression and anxiety, because I know for me, Clifton, exercise and nutrition was a big factor in my recovery. It was huge. And so my plan is to continue designing this program and take it out into the Corpus Christi community, because I know that there are so many people that could benefit from the proper exercise. And then along with addiction and mental illness, sometimes come some physical symptoms that need to be addressed, and that need someone to help them manage those conditions with exercise. Another thing that I am doing is I am really working on preparing my story as to speak it to a live audience. And so my plan for this point on is to do a lot more public speaking, to share my story. Yes.
Yes, and I definitely, and like I mentioned to you before, I definitely have something in mind. I'm going to definitely have you a part of, because like I mentioned,
Yes.
I'm eventually going to put together a mix of it where I want to get people who I believe in and who I'm inspired by to
Yes. Thank you.
tell their story. And you are definitely going to be one of the very first people I mention whenever this event starts to come.
Oh, good. Thank you so much for that. And then lastly, the Epic Fit magazine, the publisher and the photographer and the posing coach of Epic Fit magazine, they this is something brand new. I mean, as early as this morning, we just had a Zoom call about this. We want to bring an Epic Fit destination photo shoot to Corpus Christi.
That's an
so yes, it is a huge deal. It's something very, very special. So we are working out the details, and we're shooting for September of 2022. So that gives us 6 months to get photo ready. And so we will be starting putting it out there to local radio, local podcasts like yourself, local TV stations, to give the beautiful women of Corpus Christi opportunity to have some beautiful pictures taken. And with that, I'll also be designing a photo shoot ready boot camp.
Whenever that comes up, you gotta definitely come back onto the podcast to break that
Yes.
down.
Oh, yes, I'd appreciate that.
No, of course. And speaking of which, as we slowly begin to wrap everything up, Selena, because we can go on and on about talking about all this.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a few set of questions that I've been asking everybody as far as
Sure.
the opportunity to, of course, know the guest and yourself. My first question, Selena, and I'm pretty sure you've heard this many of times. What is the first thing you do or think of when you wake up every single day? Like, what's your personal morning routine?
Yes, my alarm goes off at 6 o'clock a.m. every morning. And I usually have a client at 7. So before I start getting dressed, I always make time, 5-10 minutes, to just be alone with God. And I meditate, whether I'm meditating on a scripture or just having a conversation with God. That helps me to prepare me for the day, because I ask for his guidance for the day. I ask for his wisdom for the day. And so having those few minutes with God prepares me mentally, prepares me spiritually, to work with my clients, to be my very best with everyone that I encounter, to guide my thoughts, to guide my actions. And so that's the very first thing that I do. I don't even do that. I don't even get out of bed until I've had a good conversation with God.
That's all that it starts with God, and at the end of the day, it's gonna end with God. That's for sure.
Yes.
My next question I have for you, Selena, is what is your own personal definition to you yourself of wealth and health?
Well, wealth. So for me, my personal view or definition of wealth, it doesn't always have to be monetary. Yes, we all want to be successful, and yes, we all have to make money, right, to support ourselves and our family. But wealth can be so much more than just money. Wealth can be the relationships that you have with your loved ones. Wealth can be success with your business. Wealth can be doing something to improve yourself, whether, like I said earlier, whether you want to embark on a new journey, going back to school, whatever it is. I feel like wealth is something that you're doing or something that you're planning to improve who you are.
That's exactly, that is pretty much, I agree with you 100% of what you said. It's like I like to say personally, wealth is more than just money. It's about time and putting in the work in due time to where you can become wealthy, not just in obviously money, but in information and education. And like you just said, overall improving some form of fashion every single day,
Yes.
physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially. And that's something that
Yes.
I cherish deeply. And I'm glad that you pretty much share the same similar values.
Yes. Yes. And I think you asked me about health,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So yes, that's another word that can mean so many different things to different people. For me, health is protecting my sobriety first and foremost. And health for me involves my connection with God. Health for me involves managing my mental health as well. So health is, yes, it's our body, it's our physical body, but it's so much more than that. Coming from a background of mental health issues, I have to really focus and make sure that I'm staying in tune with my therapist, my psychiatrist, because mental health is just as important as physical health.
Yes, it is.
Yes. And then of course, I'm sure to exercise regularly. I'm sure to eat a balanced, nutritious diet, because that's a huge part of how I feel and how I live my life.
That's pretty much simple and straight to the point right there, Selena. But I want
Yes.
to ask you also this: when you're not doing everything that you're doing, when you're just like, I need a break, I need to take a break from everything, what are your go-to personal hobbies that you like to do?
Clifton, I am kind of a nerd and I am such a homebody.
I don't care. There's nothing wrong with being a nerd.
That's right. That's right. That's right. But I'm, I'm really just a homebody. I am perfectly content if I am not working with a client or not designing a program or something in the community. I'm perfectly content with being here in my home with my husband and my boys, my 2 chihuahuas and my 2 cats, and just spending time because, the week goes by so fast. The kids are at school, I'm working, my husband's working. And so on our downtime, I really like to just kind of catch our breath and have like meaningful conversations and spend quality time with the people that I love.
You can't go wrong with that because sometimes we just need to take a deep breath and spend time
Yes.
with people we love and care about the most. Like whenever I'm not
Yes.
doing everything that I'm doing, if I'm not hanging out with my wonderful girlfriend of 7 years, I'm
Oh,
hanging.
wow.
Yes, yes. And if I'm not hanging out with her, I'm hanging out with my mom or my dad. Family
Yes.
time is like essential
It's
to me. I don't care how
yes. And Clifton, going back to the question you just asked a moment ago about health. For me, it's about surrounding myself with positive people and people that are supporting my journey, people that are going to lift me up, and also people that I can bless as well. And I think that's a huge part of my continued sobriety, my continued mental health is just staying grounded with the people that love me and that I love the most.
Last question I have for you, Selena, before I wrap everything up, and this is going to be an interesting one. I want to hear your take on. If you had
Okay.
if you had the opportunity to talk to yourself 10 years ago, what would you tell yourself? And where do you see yourself personally in the next 10 years?
Okay, so let's see, 10 years ago, I would have been 34, and that was about 3 years before before I got sober. So if I could talk to the Selena 10 years ago, I would tell her that your life is worth living, you matter, your situation, as bad as it seems right now, as hard as this season of your life is, it's not hopeless. There is a God that loves you. There is a God that wants you to be strong and healthy again. And get started, girl, get started on this journey. I think I procrastinated way too long and I felt like I wasted a lot of time. And so I would tell that Selena, there's hope. There's hope for your future. And to come on with it, girl.
And what would you, if you had the opportunity, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years as far as the second?
Yes, in the next 10 years, let's see, I'll be 54. So at that time, I see Lift by Selena continuing to thrive, continuing to grow. By that time, I want to have at least 1 or 2 loyal trainers working under me, medical exercise specialists working under me. And of course, I would always oversee my practice, but also having a couple of medical exercise specialists in my facility would allow me time to travel the country and tell my story.
So that's what it's all about. Getting your story out there. That way you can make his story. If you know what I mean.
That's right. I know what you mean.
Exactly, exactly. Well, Selena, For everyone who wants to find out more about what it is you do, how you're trying to inspire others, let the people know where they can find you, how they can get in contact with you.
Sure. They can go to my website, www.liftbyselena.com, or they can find me on any of the social media outlets, Facebook, Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn, and it would be at Lift by Selena.
There you go. There you have it. For anyone who wants to follow Miss Selena Lopez Hinojosa's story, or just to get to know her as a person and inquire about what she does, hit her up on all those contact items that she just named. And I want to say one thing about this before I wrap it up. Anyone who's just listened to this episode with Miss Selena Lopez Hinojosa, if you've learned one thing, I could honestly say this: you are in control. So what are you going to do to stay in control and take it to the next level? That's what I want to leave it here, and I want that to sink in. And Selena, I just thank you so much just for making time once again out of your busy schedule and being part of this episode of the HFWB
Oh, yes.
podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you so very much.
This was so long in the making, and I'm just glad that it finally happened, and I am so thrilled. And yeah, everyone who's
Yes.
been listening to this episode, this is another edition of the HFWB podcast series. Once again, this is your host, Clifton Pope. I encourage you to stay healthy, wealthy, and blessed. And until next time, everybody,